Hello, hello. Ron Callis here with another episode of Automation Unplugged, brought to you by my day job over at One Firefly. And we are here for episode 142. So, as I always do, I'm going to jump over to Facebook and make sure that we are actually streaming. So, bear with me here just one moment. And it does appear that we are live. If you are out there joining us, and if you're joining us live, or even if you're watching the video in replay, drop down into the comments and give us your location, where you're coming to us from. That's always fun to see where everyone watching the show. Don't forget to give us a like, a comment, or a share if you feel so inclined. As you can notice, today, first of all, is a different day than normal. Today is Friday, October 30th. It's 12:30. Typically and historically, we're coming to you on Wednesdays at 12:30 Eastern. And due to some scheduling conflicts, we're coming to you today on Friday, and it's the day before Halloween. And here at One Firefly, we're doing a costume contest, and everyone on our team is, in fact, in costume all day long, including internal meetings. So here, I'll move my mic. You can see my Star Trek. Let's see, which way do I go? There we go. So I'm a poor version of Captain Kirk, and although depending on how the spirit moves me, maybe I'll speak in Captain Kirk pauses a little bit into the interview. We shall see. And again, appreciate everyone joining, and I see people logging in here. Thank you so much. And today we have a special guest, and we have Tina Baker. And Tina Baker here at One Firefly. She's a member of our leadership team. She helps manage really the people side of the business. This was a newly created position that we created last year, and she joined us in Q1 of. Let me think about this. It's I think she joined us in Q1 of 2020, and I'm getting a thumbs up. So yeah, she joined us in Q1 of 2020 as manager of people operations, and let's set phasers to stun. Yeah, thank you, Ted. I'm gonna, boop, boop. I should have brought one of my old phones, my flip phones, so I could have my, beam me up, Scotty. What do you call it? Tricorder. That's the laser in the walkie-talkie they had. But let's go ahead and let's jump into it. Let's bring Tina in, and I think rumor has it Tina might have a surprise for us, but we shall see here. So let's bring in Tina Baker for show 142 of Automation Unplugged. Well, there you have it. We are interviewing a llama. Tina, is that you, or is this your friendly llama?
It's me.
I love that. That is when we interviewed you a year or two. When was this? A year and a
Last
half ago,
year
whenever
on
that was.
Halloween.
It was last Halloween, wasn't
It
it?
was.
Oh my goodness. And you showed up for the interview. I know you had other members of the team had met you, but you showed up to the interview and you were wearing that exact mask, were you not?
Yes, I was. Thankfully, I had already talked to you and Taylor at least one other time because I was, it was pretty bold to show up on a video call with a llama mask on. But I figured, why not? If they don't like it, then maybe it's not the right place for me.
Maybe it's not the right culture for me.
Yeah.
Well, so I don't even know that I fully explained it. So we are running a contest. Do you want to tell the audience what we're doing and why we're all in costume today?
Yeah, for sure. So today we wanted to do something fun for Halloween, and we asked everybody to share a picture of themselves. Had to be today. They had to give a thumbs up this morning in their pictures. And so we're sharing that, and everybody gets to vote on the best costume, and the winner gets $100. Also, we have a pet. We love our One Firefly pets, so we have a pet costume contest as well, and the winner of the pet costume gets 500, or sorry, not 500, 50. 500.
Well, everyone's going, what? I'm going to totally costume up my pet. It was 50
$50.
bucks, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
50 bucks. Well, Tina, for those that are watching or listening and they don't know you and they don't know maybe your background, I know I want to jump into a lot of topics relating to people and hiring and company culture. I know we're gonna, talk about some of your experiences at some of the places that you've worked before you joined us, and then certainly some of your experiences here at One Firefly. Um, Tell us about your background. What did you study? Like, what did you do
Sure.
before you landed in this industry?
Yeah, so I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and I landed at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, middle of the state. Lots of farms, lots of corn, and ended up studying sociology. It was a study of people and groups, and just was really passionate about people. Wasn't sure quite really what I wanted to go into, but I loved working with people. I loved being around people, and I want to say my junior year, I took some psychology classes as well. And I ended up taking an organizational change and development class that really set me up for HR. I knew as soon as I was in that class, absolutely loved it. The professor, Nathan Kunsel, I ended up working as a research assistant under him, and just really loved that piece, loved learning about it, and just knew that that was the path that I wanted to go. So when I graduated, I didn't really I worked a lot in college. I put myself through school. So I didn't have any internships because I was working for pay most of the time. And, um, and so I didn't have any HR experience under my belt, but I was able to get into recruiting. And I worked for a couple different staffing agencies early on, placing travel nurses, placing some IT folks. But those companies really gave me the sense of like what I wasn't looking for in a culture. So it was a really good learning lesson for me. I kind of bounced around to a couple of those and then realized that culture was really important to me when I was looking for a company to work for. And then I landed at Aquint, and they had a fantastic culture. I was actually temping and working with them, and they made a position for me. They are a creative and marketing staffing agency. So that was my first exposure to working with creative people that worked at marketing agencies doing different graphic design stuff. And I loved it. I loved working with those folks. I loved that job, but it was in Chicago, and I'd been there about a year, and I said, I really want to go somewhere warmer. I'm so over the Chicago winters.
Chicago
And
can get pretty cold. We might have some people listening here from Chicago
yeah,
or, Minneapolis or up north.
I
It's
love to
can
go
get pretty
visit
frigid.
anytime between May and September. but um, but yeah, so I started looking at places, and this is kind of a cool story. I ended up looking at a map and just saying, okay, where is it warm and where could I see myself? And I just kind of looked all over the country, and I landed on Texas, and I started talking to people, and that was my way of just bouncing ideas off people. And so everybody was talking about Austin. This was 2008, a little bit before everybody had started moving here, but I ended up visiting, loved it, and decided I wanted to move here. I was really sad because I felt like, man, I just love this position that I'm in. But I talked to my boss. I was trying to give them a 3-month notice and help them hire and replace me. And she was like, why can't you just work from there? And this was 2008. Like, people weren't working remote as much then.
This is early, yeah.
Yeah. So she gave me that opportunity. I moved down here with a job, which was fantastic. And I loved what I was doing. And they had a small office here, so I was able to go in and be around other people too, which is cool. And then, 2008 was not a good time. I ended up actually getting a taste of marketing recruiting, focused around SEO and SEM, because really that was the start of SEO and SEM. There was a lot of new pieces in that world, and but it was 2008, 2009, and nobody was hiring. It was a really hard time to be a recruiter trying to get people in the door when people couldn't even keep their jobs. So I ended up working at a marketing agency called Milkshake Media. They were looking for someone, and I applied and loved the culture there. I was there for 5 years. I loved working with creative people. I loved the stuff that we were working on, the clients we were working for.
that agency is really well known, or they
Yeah.
created a campaign that probably everyone watching or listening might be aware of, right?
Yeah. So before I started, unfortunately, I didn't get to be a part of the time, but they were the ones that came up with the term Live Strong. So they were working with the Lance Armstrong Foundation, and they proposed Live Strong as, this is going to be our campaign. They came up with the bracelets, all of that. I mean, they crashed the internet. It was, and if you think about it, I started there was 22 people. I think they even had less than that when they were doing this. So really crazy to think about. But we did a lot of foundation work. We did a lot of, charity work. So that was really cool to be a part of, and see what people were doing out there, and just feel like I was, even though I was an office manager slash wearer of all hats, um, it really, made me feel good to be a part of that. So,
Oh, and then how did you end up transitioning? What happened next?
yeah, so I ended up getting into financial consulting. Milkshake had kind of fizzled. They started to, the owner started to do her own thing, wanted to just really branch off and focus on just small branding projects that she could run with herself. So I ended up getting into financial consulting. And really, the cool part about that was I got to do HR, like 100% HR. I was able to help the first consulting company that I worked for. They actually did a process called top grading, and that's where I got really into recruiting, and I was able to help with recruiting, but also focus on a lot of the HR pieces and help build their culture. But that was my first taste of this top grading piece, where you really focus on finding the right people for your team, taking the time up front as you're hiring. And I learned a lot from that. The second financial consulting company that I worked for, I was solely HR, had a recruiting team that was really focused on the recruiting part, but I got to really focus on the employee engagement, the culture, and onboarding, and focus on the upfront part of that, so that the person is really set up for success in their company. And then from there, I ended up did a small short stint in the travel agent industry. Pretty much found that wasn't for me. It was I was getting to recruit, which I was excited to be back in focused on. But I was a manager of recruitment. I had recruiters underneath me. We ended up placing like 300 people in a year. It was
That's a
stressful.
lot of hiring. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
And with that, we couldn't, because of the high demand. That industry has quite a bit of turnover. Because of that high demand, we didn't get to focus as much on putting that time into the hiring. And then I stumbled on One Firefly. And one of the things that stuck out to me was that you guys use a form of top grading. And I just absolutely loved that in my previous company. And I was very excited to see that. So I read the job description. I looked at my husband and I was like, custom integration, like, isn't that what you're into? Like, don't you like to do all that to our house? Like, we have, a keypad on our door. Everything's connected to internet. We've got the dimming lights everywhere. He just loves that stuff. So I started asking him questions about that. I read the job description. I was like, I think if I were to apply for, like, if I were the recruiter looking for somebody, I would hire me. I just couldn't believe how well aligned it was with my background. So I was really excited to apply. I was really excited to hear back. I was really excited to show up in my llama hat and meet you guys.
That's awesome. And you are I think I'll get the title right. Manager of People Operations.
Right.
What did we have you responsible for doing here in One Firefly?
Yeah, so I'm helping with recruiting a lot as well. I've just this past quarter, we really redefined our process and how we're putting people through the recruiting process. I'm helping with employee engagement, running employee surveys. I've rolled out an employee handbook. So I love this role for me because I love to be a part of both HR and recruiting. In the past, when I focused on one or the other, I miss the other piece, if that makes sense. So I love that I get to have my hands in both.
So how much hiring have you done in the last year? Like what is that piece?
Yeah.
It sounds like you've spent a lot of time on the kind of building infrastructure. Maybe we had a little bit of an infrastructure in place, but you've been working on that infrastructure. You mentioned the company handbook and
Mhm.
documenting the hiring process. And you've also, you and Allison on your team have also been doing a lot of recruiting and hiring. What have you done, just so that our listeners understand kind of what's your experience been just in the last 12 months?
Yeah. So, when I started, I would think I was around number 40 or so on the team. But we have hired 11 people already this year. So we're in October and we have plans to hire more before the end of the year. So that's quite a feat, over 1/4 of our team. So really excited to continue to help the team grow. It's been awesome to see that we have that opportunity to grow, especially in these times. So just, 11 people, we're really proud of every single person that's come on the team. We feel really good about everybody on this team.
And
So
some of them are very good at cosplay and making spectacular costumes for Halloween. And anyone listening or watching should follow our Instagram and Facebook pages, because I have a feeling Stephanie and her team are going to be posting some pretty fun images here over maybe today, maybe over the weekend, but I'm pretty sure some of that's going to make it up there. Tina, a lot of the folks that are listening are not exclusively, but a lot of them are on the residential integration side of the
mhm,
business. Certainly some commercial, some security, some, different flavors, some manufacturers and whatnot. But on the residential integration side, the last, let's just say May or June to the present, there's been a large or significant inrush of projects and opportunities. It's these companies are very, very busy, to the point where they actually, in many cases, can't get all the work done that they would like to, because they have manpower limitations.
mhm,
And so they're, in some cases, some people have just paused to say that we can only do what we can do.
mhm.
Other people are at varying stages trying to hire or trying to figure out how to hire. And so could you give us a little bit of a hiring 101, or some best practices around hiring, understanding that a lot of folks listening are probably going to be tuning in very intently to everything you say here?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. I think, one of the things going in is just always making sure that you know exactly what you are looking for. Whether it's, having a job description, making sure that you just have, you know what you're looking for. Because if you just kind of put feelers out there, you may talk to some people and they may seem great and you're like, oh, yeah, let's just hire them. But they might not have the skills that you're actually looking for. So you really need to make sure that you know exactly what skills you're looking for, so that you can start in that way. Another big piece of advice that we love at One Firefly is to ask people for referrals. Reach out to your networks. Reach out to the folks that already work for you. They may have somebody that they know is they can stand behind. They can put their stamp on, right? And that show referrals statistically are much better hires than just finding somebody off the street. So that is a good avenue.
What do you sorry for interrupting, but what would someone interviewing a candidate, and if that candidate pauses or is hesitant around giving referrals, what do you read into that?
You mean references?
It references.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I always think it's a good idea to check references so that, you know, I do realize that people could have somebody, have you call somebody that might vouch for them. But I think any hesitation is a red flag. You would want to look for, and one of the tactics that we use is we ask, what would your supervisor say about you, knowing that we're going to check references in the future. We walk them through what our process is, so that there is that kind of fact check piece to it. But if they're hesitant, that's definitely somewhere that you want to make sure, do I feel bad, do I feel good about this, or do I not feel good about it, and kind of go with that gut feeling. Usually it's a red flag.
You and I, Tina, did a joint presentation for CEDIA, and
Yep.
we did it around the A method of hiring,
Hmm.
and that comes from a book. And I think there you go. You have the book. This is our
It's like my Bible next to my computer at all times.
this is our hiring Bible. So again, for anyone, I'll have Stephanie put the link to the Who book by Randy Street and Jeff Smart. We'll put that down in the comments. Can we at a high level take the audience through kind of we'll do it in quick succession. There's a
Sure.
CEDIA course, I think, recorded.
Mhm.
I think CEDIA would make that available to you. If you're a CEDIA member, you guys can go watch that. But if we were to give the Cliff Notes versions to the A method of hiring, what are the Cliff Notes?
Yeah. So one of the big things that they mention is to develop a scorecard. What does a scorecard mean? I know that that may just seem like a weird term, but really it's a matter of, similar to a job description, understanding exactly what the outcomes are of what you're going to want this person to do once they get started. So even if it's looking at the first year, it is something in the outcomes, right? Like, for example, if this is a technician that you're going to have going door to door, meeting your customers, going in the house, installing things, can that person do that job? Is that person capable? And then you are going through this checklist as you're chatting with them to make sure that they're hitting those marks. So that would be the big piece of, kind of like I said, getting that set up before you go out and look for the right person.
So I'm going to pause you there, and
Yeah.
I'm going to say for those listening, you notice she says it's further than a job description. So I'm going to challenge you. Do you even have a job description? And is it something you copied and pasted from Indeed or some job board, or have you thought critically about what you've said you want and need? And then it's really that next step, which is really the outcomes you expect them to be able to
Mm-hmm.
perform from that project. And so it is harder, but it's better because you know exactly what you're expecting from that candidate.
And
What
just like
what
anything, taking a little bit of that time up front. I know that, you may feel the pressure. I got to get somebody in the door right away. But if you just spend a little bit more time up front to get that ready and good to go before you start looking for the right person, you're going to be better set up for success. Um, but yeah, to your point, I think having a job description is a clear way for you to communicate to candidates too what you're looking for, and then you go beyond that and pull that those outcomes and make sure that as you're talking to people, you could see that person doing well with those outcomes.
Okay, what's next?
um, so then we do a screening interview, and that piece is really a quick 4-question phone screen. It's a quick, you decide the person's right or not, and that way you can get through as many people as you can. Once they've done well in that, we've added a skills assessment to our process, so that you can really test the person on the skills that you're looking for. You may have them do some sort of skills assessment as well. I always suggest, if you can, definitely, put that into your process. And then the next piece is a top grading interview, which is really where you're diving into this person's background and you're understanding what accomplishments they have had over their previous jobs. Somebody who does well in a top grading interview is going to be the person that has no problem, giving great examples of what they've accomplished, and even sometimes, what they weren't very good at, right? So they're going to rise to the top. You're going to see the difference in somebody that is a really, good worker, that somebody, is proud of their work and can really rise to the top. You'll see that happen as you're talking to them in top grading. Somebody who doesn't do well is going to give not so solid examples. They're going to kind of struggle through some of the questions. And those questions are, how have you performed in that role? How are you measured and how did you do according to those measurements?
Tina, in that top grading interview, in classic top grading, you always have 2 people conducting that interview.
Yes.
And that's expensive, right? 2 valuable members of your team sitting in that interview with someone you may not hire, or you may hire them.
Mm-hmm.
Why 2 people?
Really, it's, having that option of somebody else asking like kind of toggling back and forth. I think there's a benefit to that. So not just one person running the interview, but having somebody who, okay, I'm going to ask you a question about, how are you measured? And then the other person can jump in and say, but how did you perform? Like, how did you perform compared to other people in the role? And just being able to go back and forth. And as you're talking, there's going to be stuff that comes up that you may not think to ask, but the other person might. So it's just always better to have 2 people to be able to conduct that interview. And it's a really big piece of our process. If we feel really good about somebody after the top grade interview and they move on to the next step, I mean, that there's a really, really high chance that we're going to hire that person.
Okay, so what comes? Let's say they moved through that gauntlet and they've now quote been moved on.
Yeah.
What happens?
So then we do more of a focused interview.
Same day, same time?
Nope, it's probably going to be and the top grading interview, just so you know, can be, an hour or even 2 hours long, depending on the person's experience. The focus interview is going to be a little bit shorter, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, but that is focusing on the skills needed to do the job. So asking questions, behavioral questions, asking the questions, as far as, can you do this? Tell me about a time where you've done this, and going and diving really in deeply into those skills.
Do and I'm going to say it the One Firefly way. Do we have the same people doing the phone screen as doing the top grading, as doing the focused interview, as doing no? Why?
Nope. Because we want our team, first of all, we want to get different opinions. We want to get different questions in. We want the person to get different understandings, from each person that they're talking to at the team. And they're also getting a taste of our culture, and we're getting a taste of what they're looking for in a culture, which is also really important to us. These are questions that we ask throughout this process, in regards to culture. And so it is really important for multiple people on the team to meet with the candidates.
Okay, let's say they go through the focused interview and they get a thumbs up. Or what are they getting? Are they getting is it qualitatively scored, or is it
Yes,
just pass fail? What is it?
we actually have measures on our end where we are scoring each competency. So, how are they in regards to integrity and honesty is one, right? Are they a team player? And we're giving them a score on, a scale of 1 to 5, and they have to get a certain percentage, in order to pass. In addition to that, we also kind of have this human component that we talk about, like, would we want to work with this person? Do we feel like this is the right culture fit as well? But that is definitely quantitative. We're adding those up and we're scoring it and deciding whether that person should move on. And then from there, we check references, and we ask them questions about, their strengths. We bring up, hey, this person said that this was one of their weaknesses. Can you expand on that? So we are asking those questions. We're also asking for, one of my favorite reference check questions, little insight for you guys, is if you feel really good about somebody, ask their previous manager, what can you do to set that person up for success at this company? Like, what advice would they tell their future manager? Because that person is invested in the candidate. Clearly, they work together. They're willing to take that reference check call. And that is super valuable information that you can give to the manager of that person.
I love that. Just another question. I know in the past, it's been a little while since I've been making these reference calls, but I used to like to ask would you rehire this person?
Definitely.
And
that's number one on the question list for sure.
If it's a quick yes, that's a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good sign. Now, if they go through that, the references and they're all thumbs up, what happens?
Well, then they get to meet you and Taylor. And in that meeting, it's a little bit more of, we're actually selling them on us. So telling them about our culture, really making sure, this is who we are, and we believe you'll fit in with our family, with our culture, with our team. And then, really getting them excited about the position. And that way, a lot of times Ron has, offered somebody on the spot, and they say, yeah, I'm in, let's do this. So it's really cool to see that. I think, not just trying to find the right people, but selling yourself. Don't just expect people to sell them to you, or, sell themselves to you. It's both ways. It's two-way street.
Yeah, certainly with top candidates. I mean, if they're a top candidate, they likely are sitting on many offers or many opportunities. Mm-hmm. You may have even recruited them or headhunted them, and they might have a great job and don't need a job. And so if they're awesome or they're an A player, as we'd say, then there might need to be some selling involved to get them to ultimately join us. Now, at a high level, when one goes through this type of process, and I want to say you gave me some stats. I know we used it in our CDF presentation. I think maybe putting you on the spot. But what happens in terms of your ability to retain employees if they've gone through this process? And is there
Yeah.
any anecdotal data or high level data of what it
Yeah.
means?
I don't remember the stats off the top of my head. I know that, you know, I can't think of a time where we've offered somebody after going through this process that I've been here that they have said no. I believe it's happened here in the past, but it is very, very rare. By the time you get to that final meeting with you, folks are ready to sign up and we're ready to sign them up. And so that's where, I think ongoing because they've had such insight to our culture. They've met with more of our team up front. They know what they're getting into. That we've talked about what outcomes we're looking from them. We have that scorecard, and actually, we take that scorecard and we give it to them as most of the time it's their bonus program. So it's already in place. They already know what's expected to them. You hear so many people that start jobs and they get in there like it wasn't what I thought I was. It wasn't what I was sold on. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I'm really disappointed. When you've already set all that, up front, those expectations, the person's going to come and be so much happier. They're going to be so they're already prepared for what exactly is going to be expected of them. And people do stay longer. I have seen that as proof in the fast place, the last place that I used top grading. I want to say there, I remember we kept track of it. It was like 98, 99% acceptance rate. So very, very cool. It's just a great process. Like I said, the more you can put up front, the better it is going forward.
You've used the word culture many times. You used it when you talked about some of the places that you worked before One Firefly, and you liked places because of their culture. You
Mhm.
didn't like places because of their culture. We hire people at One Firefly around cultural fit. What does that mean? What does it mean to have culture? And then I want to transition that to, in the time of COVID here,
Yeah.
how do people, where there's, less activity happening in the office, how do we ultimately cultivate a stronger company culture? But just what does it mean? What does it mean?
Yeah. So for me, culture is, it's really giving people a picture of what the team, how we act, how we work together, and kind of going for us. You can kind of set that as an example in your core values. So One Firefly has also used this book called Traction, and we've implemented the EOS program for systems operations, right? So in that process, we set up a purpose, our North Star, a mission, and our core values. We have 5 core values, and I can bet you anybody on our team knows every single one of them because we talk about them all the time. We use them when we give kudos to each other, which is another thing we may talk about in a minute. But and so when we're hiring, we actually ask questions around those core values. And we also have this screening in the screening process all the way at the front when we do a phone interview. We are asking people what they look for in a culture, and we try and match that up with what our core values are. So culture is, I think even more and more people are wanting to have fun at work. They're wanting to not just show up in the job and, do the widgets and then leave. It's more about how can I really make an experience about where I'm working, where I'm spending so much of my life, and have fun with it.
What are examples, without you naming any companies in your past, but what's a type of environment you've been in where it was not a good culture? Like, just what's an example of what that means?
Yeah, I think one of the previous experiences I had was, I was expected to do some things that I didn't feel were morally right. One of the examples, and I won't name where this was, but to actually get references up front so that I could call them and then try and, because they were managers at companies, call those places and try and get business opportunities that way without even having without having the candidate, up for a job, right? So I may talk to a candidate because I knew that they had worked at a company that we're trying to get into. And for me, I couldn't do it. And I ended up leaving within 3 months in that company because I was just, that was against my
That's pretty
moral.
dirty.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
So
I'm gonna put some shout outs here on the screen.
yeah,
We got a bunch of folks making comments, Tina, and I just saw Wes's pop up.
I'm going to plug in my computer because I didn't realize I was getting low.
Let me just see. You know what? Maybe my software on occasion doesn't like to cooperate, and it's not cooperating, so it won't let me share it. But I see
just saw
Wes.
one.
Is it on the screen?
It was. You took it down? There it is.
Okay, I don't see it, but I'm glad that you do. So I'll read it. It says, One Firefly's culture is the greatest I've been a part of. Thank you, Wes. Wes is a rock star of ours down in Carolinas. And let me just see a few more comments here. I think this was Brandy, actually. She's on our team, an account manager. I think that's when she heard there might be a $500 bounty on pet costumes. I think she said she was going to go run out and buy a costume. So, or not buy a costume, but she has to get the dog first or the cat and then dress them up. And then,
We fully encourage adoption of cats or dogs at One Firefly.
yeah, we have. So let's talk about, yeah, I've got a few more shout outs. Let me put a few more. Becca says, happy Halloween. Allison says hello. Thank you, Allison. Taylor says fortune favors the bold. I completely agree. I think he was referring to you wearing the costume. We use a tool called Slack at One Firefly, and there's really, in my mind, there were 3 major pieces of software that we've deployed over the 13 years. I remember the day that we went down the path of turning on something called Basecamp. It was January 2011.
Okay.
And that was the first time in a systematic way we were able to log client communication, our communication to the clients and the clients' replies in an organized way. Oh my goodness, the Excel spreadsheets we had before that I had people on my team trying to keep projects organized. And this was before Google Sheets. This was Excel.
Wow. Yep.
This was bad. This was painful.
We actually interviewed somebody this week who mentioned that she implemented Slack at her company because prior to that they were doing a group text.
Yes.
I don't know that.
All right. So then there was, and I won't go into detail, but then there was Workfront, which is our enterprise project management environment where we design all of our projects. And then there was Slack. And I'm going to give Chris Smith, formerly of Cloud9 Smart. He was on the Azione board, and he has since gone out on his own as the co-team. He's now a consultant for integrators. And he said, Ron, my goodness, you have to be running on Slack. Like, how are you not doing this? And knowing what we know now about our business and all of our team all over North America, like I literally do not know how we would be One Firefly today without Slack or some equivalent.
I don't know either. I love
Slack. How do we use Slack, and how do we use Slack around the company culture side of the equation?
Yeah. So we have lots of fun channels. And we even set up a new one for Halloween called Spooky. But we have, like I mentioned, pets. We have it's a dog enthusiast channel, but we have lots of other pets on there as well. It's really our replacement for the water cooler talk. We're all remote, so we don't get to just stop at somebody's desk and chit chat how their weekend was. But on the Fun Food channel, you can say, hey, I cooked this weekend for my husband. It was our anniversary and it turned out great. Here's the recipe. It's almost like we have more of, more than just water cooler talk, because you can share things and pictures and all of that. So it's been really great for our culture. And I absolutely love it. I think our team loves it. It's nice to just, if you need 5 minutes to go look at cute puppies, you can do that. If you need 5 minutes to check out the movie channel, you can check that out, see what you're going to watch later that night. Just absolutely love it.
Awesome. Motivocity. What is that? How do we use it?
Yeah. So Motivocity was something that I knew we were looking for an engagement survey software. So that we could, get feel of how our folks were feeling about working for One Firefly, but um, it ended up really tying in with our core values. So we had already rolled out these core values. You and I, Ron, were trying to figure out how can we really instill the core values on a day-to-day basis where people are thinking about them. And Motivocity had this opportunity for us to give our team kudos based on those core values. So our team every month gets $3 to give out to other people. And if they don't use their $3, they completely lose it. So it's something you definitely want to do. Reminder to the team, they expire tomorrow. Um, so
I
get
gave
your
mine
$3
last
up.
dollar out last night. So
There you
I'm
go. So we use that to give each other kudos, and it's cool too because you don't always know what other projects people are working on, and you get to see these success stories, and people are saying, this person found a way because they did this and that, and they really helped this client out, and here's what they did. So we're seeing like real life examples, and we're hearing about that, and it gives folks a lot more insight to what everybody's doing, which is really cool.
I I love that. Now, for those that are listening, our integrators aren't fully virtual, right? Because their guys and their guys and gals have to go out to houses and do installations, or go out to commercial sites and do installations. They probably have to go to their offices or warehouses and pick up gear. So it's kind of like a pseudo virtual. They're probably, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
imagine some of them are together less than they were pre-COVID. Um, just from a people standpoint and a management of people or an understanding people standpoint, Tina, what are any ideas or considerations that you would have, owners or GMs think about as they're working with their people, given the stresses on all of us
Yeah.
right now?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I've been thinking about that too. And then today I actually had somebody show up to fix my fridge. So just the safety aspect, before he walked in, he
Was
put
he
on.
wearing PPE?
Oh yeah, I mean he was covered, decked out in it, and I think as y'all think about your folks going into residential homes and commercial spaces where there's a lot of people, giving them that time, extra time that might take them to get the PPE together, making them feel comfortable with it, making sure you're asking questions. How are you doing with this situation? Just showing that you care because it is a tough time for everybody, and I think people that actually have to be out. And I'm thankful that I work from home and I'm here in my safe space, but I think about all the people who are out there working their butts off and going in and out of these places and just not knowing how safe it is. Just making sure that they feel supported, whether it's just asking them a question every once in a while of how are you doing with this, is there anything else I can do to help provide anything that you need, that sort of thing, because it really is tough on everybody.
No, I agree. Any closing thoughts, Tina? Any words of advice around the management of people, either whether on the hiring side or even on the just the ongoing management and growth of one's team? Any ideas or thoughts that come to mind for you to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think just thinking and thinking back and all the amazing mentors and leaders I've had in my life, including you, Ron. I think just being open and transparent in all aspects, hiring. I think we have a great rapport with our team because we are so clear and transparent with what we're doing. And then communicating with empathy is my biggest thing. And what do I mean by that? Like really understanding where somebody's coming from, and also providing that I'm so sorry that you're going through that, like let me know if I can do anything. Just those little words like that, instead of just expecting we got to get this done, let's go, let's go, let's go. Take a minute to have a conversation with your folks, have a real conversation with your folks. Even that, just how's your family doing, can make a really big impact.
No, I love that. For those that are listening, Tina, that would like to get in touch with you directly, how do
Yeah.
you want them to do that?
They can email me tbaker@onefirefly.com, or find me on LinkedIn, message me. I'm just Tina Baker. I have my SPHR, so you'll see an SPHR after my name.
Think I'm doing it on the screen. Did I get
Yeah,
it right?
it's in my email. Yep.
Yep, using my newfangled software here, putting it
Cool.
up on the screen. For those that are listening to the podcast, I'm using my software and I got a little scroller moving across the screen with Tina's email address, tbaker at One Firefly. Tina, it has been a pleasure to have you on episode 142 of Automation Unplugged. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate
All right, gang. So there you have it. That was episode 142. Went down the HR, the people side of things. I know that in all of the conversations I'm having with you, my customers, integrators around the world, I know that you guys are maybe in a position of stress and frustration, as if COVID wasn't enough. You're in like a caviar. You have a caviar problem, many of you, and that is you have a lot of business closing right now, a lot of demand on you. And if I were to get out my magic 8 ball and predict, I'm thinking we're going to at least have a few more quarters of that, if not much more of that. And it's just, well, what do you do if there's so much demand that you can't convert it because you're short on manpower? Which means you have to know that it's a competitive landscape out there, and there are companies that are going to try to take your people, and there are going to be demands on you to grow or add people to your team. And I know there's lots of questions about how to do that and how to do that in the best way. So hopefully you found some of this sage advice from Tina helpful. And certainly we've enjoyed having her on our team. She definitely makes us a better company, and she certainly helps us take better care of our people. And without your people, you're nothing. At least that's what I believe. So if you are listening or watching, and you have not already gone to your favorite podcast software and typed in Automation Unplugged, please do so. You can subscribe. And if you feel so compelled, leave a review or share this show with others. The more the merrier. We're trying to get the word out and share all the interesting people that make up our fun industry. And on that note, I'm going to leave you. Definitely have a happy and safe Halloween this weekend. I hope if you are sending your kids out, or if you're greeting kids, you're keeping everyone's health and safety top of mind, and make it a safe and fun weekend. And I will see you guys next week. Actually, you know what? I'm thinking about this. Next week, I'm doing a bunch of video shoots. I don't know if I'm doing Automation Unplugged next week. I think we might have a hiatus for a week, and then we'll be back the following week. So on that note, I will see you soon.